Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Zinke, it's great to have you here this morning. Thank you for all you've done this past year. Last week, I, along with Senator Crapo, sent you a letter regarding grazing management in wilderness areas on BLM land. Specifically, the letter asked you to re-examine BLM Manual 6340 that was finalized during the Obama administration and fails to reflect congressional intent. The record is clear. Congress intended to allow grazing, including increasing the number of AUMs where appropriate in designated wilderness areas. Since we just sent you the letter last week, I don't expect you to have a complete answer for me today, but will you commit to reviewing this particular manual to ensure it is consistent with congressional intent?
Well, as you know, the Wilderness Act of '64 was a grand compromise between three parts: the preservationists, the hunters and fishermen, and the cattlemen. And it's my opinion that we have not lived up to the obligation and the intent of that law, and we're looking at it. Clearly, when you can't do timber harvest, there's a lot of dead and dying timber and undergrowth, which is a fire hazard. And many times in the wilderness, it starts in the wilderness either by lightning or other means, and it extends outside. So having grazing has always been a positive in most cases of removing the dead and dying timber and some of the growth. We are looking at that policy. Grazing also, you have to weigh it with elk and deer, because in many wildernesses it's a competition for food, and we don't want to make sure we have unintended consequences, but we're looking at it hard, and I agree with you, it should be looked at.
Thank you. I also want to discuss 68 grazing permits up for renewal in Owyhee County, Idaho. These permits have come to be known as the Owyhee 68. Originally scheduled for renewal in 1997, these permits are still awaiting renewal more than 20 years later due to ongoing litigation. Over the years, BLM has repeatedly capitulated to the demands of environmental groups to the detriment of ranchers who have worked on the land for generations. While grazing permit renewals can be complicated, they should not be this complicated. What are you doing at the Department of Interior to ensure that BLM and the other agencies involved in the renewal of grazing permits have the resources they need to complete the process?
I think in this case, my understanding, it's before the administrative judges at the Interior Board of Land Appeals. But I agree with your overall thesis that it could have been willful and intentional to slow roll these things. And we've seen that across the West. We'll work with you on it, and we'll show you all the data that we have on it. In coming from Montana, where there's a lot of really good people out there, in my experience, ranchers respect the land, and some of the greatest land in this country is in the hands of ranchers. They're good people, they work hard, they preserve the land, and in general, if a lot of our land had ranchers on it, we wouldn't have the issues we do.
All right, thank you. And for sake of the committee, I'll yield back the rest of my time.